Welcome to my sewing room. I absolutely love the show we have for you today. It's all about use of elegant piping and beautiful children's clothes. This first really beautiful dress I have for you starts out with a little pretty silk ribbon embroidery on the top. Now let me hold the lace apart for you to see that there is some tiny, tiny baby piping right in between those two rows of gathered lace. Moving down on the lace a little, on the dress a little bit, you'll see another wonderful little bit of piping that comes around at the top of this smocked inset. And then there is more piping at the bottom of the smocked inset. Really elegant ways to use piping. Piping is really nice on little boys' clothes too. This little suit is in a new book that we're working on for boys and girls. As you can see, it has a wonderful little machine embroidery at the top. Now, where is the piping, you might say? Come on down and look at the pants. This wonderful, good-looking pants has piping right along where the fullness is gathered in with pleats, and it also has, as you can maybe see there, piping on the pocket. Really nice tailored pants for that little son or grandson. Another little boy's suit, again from our new boy book, has piping around the sailor collar. And let me pull the little sleeve over here for you. Wonderful piping also around the sleeve, on the front and the back. Very, very tailored. This is one of the most beautiful coats that I have ever seen. It features gold lame piping around the collar, and then the smocked sleeve has piping at the top of the sleeve, and the piping goes all the way down the front of the coat. By the way, this smocking pattern was in a past issue of So Beautiful magazine. Now, to learn how to do this really elegant piping, come along with me to the technique boards. Making beautiful piping is very important for classic children's clothes and for use in women's clothes also. Now let's see how to do it, and it is very easy. First of all, I'm going to trace on bias lines, or lines on the bias, and then I'll come in here and clip and make my bias strips. This bias strip is already ready, and I have used here a gimp cord or a kite cord, but be sure you wash and shrink it. Then I'm going to put it here in the middle of my strip, fold it over, and I'm going to stitch along. Now, not really, really close to the kite cord yet, just stitch it down. Now here I have used a double-sided sticky tape, and I'm going to come in and put my piping right on my garment or my collar and come in here and stick it up. Now there's another thing you can do. I can use my basting glue. As you see, I put a little bit of basting glue along here, and then all I have to do is come in here and put my fabric on top, and I let the glue get just a little bit tacky there so it will hold it, so I can put my garment there. Then I'm ready to come in and stitch very, very close to this line, attaching all of them. Then when I open it up, I have that absolutely beautiful teeny tiny piping. I really, really love small piping in classic children's clothes. Now then, let's come over here. I've made another strip of piping, this time on silk dupioni. Now, as you can see, I have made little slices along this piping, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to put this piping around this absolutely wonderful little Peter Pan collar. This is a treatment where we use piping so much in classic children's clothing. Now you can see I had to put the little slices in order that the piping would come around. Now I have stitched the piping after putting my basting glue on it, and I'm going to take the next piece of collar or my lining, bring it over, put some more glue on it or just hold it. Then I'm going to use my piping foot, and I'm going to travel around. And by the way, I'm also going to clip this collar if need be around the curves there too, so I can clip around. I'm going to come all the way around, and then I'm going to, after I clip it, I'm going to turn it right side out, and you can see that magnificent little tiny piping around the Peter Pan collar. Now the third place we're going to talk about putting elegant piping for classic children's clothes is around a pocket. This is a little pocket that's going to go anywhere you want for it to go on a garment. I'm going to come down here, glue the piping down first, and then stitch it down. Once again, I have to make a little clip where I'm going to turn a corner. It will not turn a corner without it. I'm going to come here and make another little clip in my silk dupioni piping. Come around here. Now let me open it up here. Make another little clip, and then I will glue it down and then stitch it down. Now then, in order to finish this little pocket, I'm going to turn it under, but I've got one more step. It surely won't be pretty like that at the top. All right, let's go around to the back. After I've turned it under and pressed it, then I will fold down the piping, unpin it. I will fold down the collar then, after folding down the piping, turn it over, bring it over to the garment. You see my little pocket is just folded down, and then I will stitch in the ditch to attach it. And piping a little pocket is absolutely adorable also. Let's come over here and let me quickly just show you how easy it is to use a pin tuck foot to make the piping. Okay, remember, I made the piping, laid it down on my garment, and then I'm going to stitch it down first, and then after that I will bring the next piece over and stitch it. Now I'm going to use my pin tuck foot here, the 3-groove pin tuck foot, and I'm going to stitch it down first, just guiding the edge of the foot in the piping, and the pin tuck foot is really great. If you don't have a pin tuck foot, you can also use a cording foot. I'll stitch the first row down and pick it up, and then I'm going to go ahead. Now my piping stitched down the first time. I'm going to put the second row of fabric right here, line it up, and once again, that little groove on my pin tuck foot, when I line it up in there, that will mean a good place to hold it, and I've moved my needle position over to the right just a little bit where I'm lining up real closely. I'll tell you, these, either a cording foot or a pin tuck foot is really a wonderful way to be sure that your piping goes on there really straight and that you can get your stitching very, very, very close to the line. Okay, now then I have stitched it together. Let me open it up. Do you see how beautiful that piping is that I have stitched down, and I just used this pin tuck foot and my little elegant piping. Now, not big fat piping. I personally don't care for big fat piping. And this little tiny piping is now peeking out. And now then, I would like for you to come along with me and let me show you a really beautiful doll dress. Double piping is one of my very favorite techniques to use, not only on a doll dress, as I'm going to share with you, but also on other classic children's clothing, as well as home decorating items. What is double piping? My little doll has a wonderful, very, very tailored dress with a red and a yellow piping around the collar, around the bias binding, 2 strips on either side of the double piping that comes down the dress, double piping around the waistline, and even double piping around these really, really pretty little tailored sleeves. Now, it's very easy to do. Let me share with you how. First of all, you're going to use your kite cord or your gimp cord again, wash it and shrink it. I have bias strips cut, one in blue, one in pink, and of course I will fold it over and make 2 pieces of piping. Now that I've made my 2 pieces of piping, I really like to take this basting glue, which washes right out. Go ahead, run a little line of basting glue along there. It washes right out. It's just absolutely wonderful. It doesn't glump up your machine or anything. And just kind of glue the second row of piping right up to the first row of piping, and then you can stitch the 2 together as you see here. Now the final look I want to achieve will be the fabric with the 2 rows of piping. See, on this fabric we picked up the pinks and the blues, how pretty it is. Now let's go ahead and go over to the machine. After gluing it, I have put my 2 rows of piping down, and then I'm going to put my final row of fabric down, right sides to right sides. I've moved my needle position over to the right a little bit, and I am using my pin tuck foot in order to guide it. And then when I go ahead and stitch it all the way down, once again, when I open it up, here will be the double row of piping, a really, really pretty treatment on so many different things. And next, I have a beautiful silk ribbon project to share with you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today Beverly Sheldrick from New Zealand. Beverly is the author of a wonderful book on embroidery called Colonial Inspirations. She is also a regular designer for both So Beautiful and Fancy Work magazines. Beverly, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Martha. It's just wonderful to be here as always. Now, Martha, today I'd like to introduce your viewers to this beautiful little doll's bed that we have here, and we're going to be using this bed throughout this particular series. Each segment that we have that I'm on, I will be teaching them yet another of the beautiful roses that we have on this bed, and I think you'll feel it's really very pretty. It's just going to take us a little while to do it. Now, today we're going to be doing this lovely rose that we have here. It's a big rose, Martha, and it's a chain stitch rose, one which is really very, very suitable for a situation like this where you need a large rose. If it's not going to get caught easily. So often a lot of the smaller roses that we do in this 4mm ribbon, they don't translate to a bigger rose. They flop and they become loose and are not useful. So we're going to be doing this rose. Another thing that I'd like to point out with this particular rose, which is very, very good, is we can get a sense of perspective to it. It has these little French knots, these darker coloured French knots that we have in the middle here. And then we've used a second colour and gone round. Now, if I wanted to make the rose look as though it was sort of flopping a little to one side, then I would have a little more of the stitching on one side. And in this way, it looks as though it's just falling over like that. Something which is often a little difficult to do. So it's really very, very simple, the way in which it's worked. So how are we going to do this lovely rose? Now we're going to start very, very easily. We start with just the 3 French knots in the middle. Now when you do these French knots, do them closely together, tight, just form a little V like you can see I've done here, and then squash them closely. Don't have gaps between them because that just won't give you a pretty centre. Because with this rose, the centre really does show. It's not like some of the other roses where the stitches that go round encroach over it. So here we are. We have these 3 tight little French knots here. We've then taken our second colour, and this is a medium. In the colour jump, we've gone from a dark to a medium colour, and you can see that I have done little chain stitches around here, and then I've gone round for a second time. So we'll now look at just how we're doing it. Very, very simple. Just these 3 French knots, which are here, and we all know how to do 3 French knots. They're very simple. Just like that. You can see how I'm putting that close in beside there. And then I'll do the third one. Now you'll see I've already done the 3 here. You'll see how tight they are. Now we've taken our second colour, and we're simply going to do this chain stitch like this. Just put a short tail there, come up again. In fact, if you want to, you don't really even need to do that catch stitch. You can simply just keep on going like this and putting your needle back in there like that and then over like that. The one thing that you do need to remember when you're doing it is that you don't want to, when you start to go round the second time, don't put your needles, or you make your stitches the same length as the previous ones, because if you do that, then you end up with a square rose. And they've invented a lot of funny things these days, but I don't think they've invented a square rose yet. You never know these days. So we just keep on going round like this until we've come to here. Here we are, almost ready to go on this next one, putting it in and going like that. Now, it doesn't want to go under, so we'll just leave it. You will see here that I've actually taken a third colour, and you really can make this colour, these very, very pretty indeed. You can use 3 tones of the same colour, and that's very, very lovely. It gives a lovely, lovely effect. You will see when I'm doing this that I'm putting this stitch so that it's roughly halfway between those two, and this is how we do it so that we don't get a square rose. And again, we'll just keep on going round. The number of times you go round will denote just how big or how small a rose you want. But I think you'll agree it's very pretty, very easy.
Oh, Beverly, it is so pretty, and I absolutely adore this doll bed. Not only the stitches, but I understand you're going to share with us exactly how to make all these wonderful, lovely linens to go on the doll bed. And now I have an antique technique to share with you. You are going to love this little antique dress. It has the sweetest little puffing that goes across the shoulders, and then this really pretty Swiss trim. And look at this little tiny puffing, about 1 inch wide, and more Swiss trim. And then I want you to look at the details around the waist. This is a batiste strip that buttonholes have been made so you can run ribbon up and down, and actually you could make that kind of a strip today. And if you purchase beading this wide, you're going to pay a small fortune, so that's a great way to make beading. Then on down on the skirt of the dress is so sweet too. It has that little narrow puffing and some pretty Swiss trim. And you know what I'd like to do is turn this dress over so you can see the back. It is equally as sweet as the front. Let me just show you the back. See there, they used the little puffing that went over the shoulders and then more little puffing. And speaking of little puffing, that's what I'd like to show you how to do. Puffing can be made many, many ways. One of the ways it can be done is on this first little strip. You see, I have simply zigzagged over this pearl cotton. Now, I used to say lovingly that you could use dental floss also, and you can if you want to use this method, and you can also use quilting thread. But you zigzag over the pearl cotton in this case, and then you simply slip your gathers down and your little edge is finished, and that's a pretty type of puffing. Now let's come over here to the next strip, which is really probably a little bit more favorite, and then I'm going to show you my very favorite in a minute. This puffing, I want to have the finished puffing be 1 inch wide. I've got to have some seam allowances, a half on each side, if I'm going to zigzag over the cording, so my total strip is 2 inches wide. My finished puffing will be 1 inch wide, and I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance on either side. Okay, I'm going to zigzag over my cording and slip it down, and that's another great way to make puffing. The third way I'm going to share with you, once again, if I want my puffing to be 1 inch wide, the total piece needs to be 2 inches wide. And as you can see, I've simply run 2 rows of gathering stitches, 2 rows of gathering stitches. I will pull them in gathering. That's kind of the way, you know, we've always done gathering. By the way, it's easier to pull the bobbin threads anytime you run gathering rows, or rather I find it easier. Now here is my very favorite way of making puffing. This little puffing strip, as you can see, is 1 inch wide in the middle, and the whole piece was 2 inches wide. And here I have used the gathering foot on the sewing machine, which I think is by far the superior method of gathering. Now then, this is the gathering foot. It's kind of a funny looking little foot. Many machines do have gathering feet, and I'm just going to simply run it slowly. Now you say, why in the world are you running it slowly? And by the way, as you can see, it kind of curls around in the back. That's okay. That's what they all do, so don't worry about that curling. It's going to uncurl in a few minutes. Now then, why do you sew slowly? Well, if you're just gathering one side of a ruffle, there's no reason to sew slowly at all. But if you're going to gather 2 sides, I happen to think that on most gathering feet, the faster you go, the more it gathers. Now, I may be totally wrong about that, But since I believe it, I better follow along with that principle. Now, I've run the gathering down one side, and then in order to make the puffing, all in the world I will do is put it back underneath the gathering foot, and I will slowly, now this time it's a little harder to run the second side, I will slowly, just kind of keep it smushed out there, I will slowly, and as I said, very slowly, and you can see what's happening there, beautiful puffing, perfect puffing is going to happen. And now then, I have a really, really fun craft to share with you. I'm so happy to have as my guest today my daughter, Joanna Pullen Hammett. Joanna is a recent graduate of Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas, and I'm happy to tell all of you that she has recently joined me in my business. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a tape measure cover, and it looks just like this. And you pull your tape measure out, and you can push it in, and it's so much more beautiful than just a plain tape measure laying on your sewing machine. You first take your 2 pieces of fabric and you sew your batting to the fabric, just like this. Next, you take your 2 pieces of fabric with your batting and you sew all the way around your squares, and you leave just enough room to put your tape measure in your square. And finally, you sew your beautiful lace around your square to cover up that zigzag. You can also add any kind of decoration you want. We've decided to add a butterfly, but you can make it as creative as you would like. And then your end product will be a beautiful tape measure cover. And by the way, you can also use this as a pincushion too, because a lot of people have those ugly plastic things, and this makes it look a lot better.
Joanna, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Now then, I would like, you know what, it's fun to have these wonderful little goodies to lay around, and then you don't, as you say, you don't have to have just the plain ordinary things out there.
I know, I like a little creativity.
I know, that is fun.
It is.
And now then, I would like for you to join me in my attic where I have a really wonderful antique just for you. I have the cutest little slip to share with you today. Now, since this is the piping show, I'm going to go down and show you where the piping is on this slip. That's really why I chose it, but there's some of the neatest little things on this slip. First of all, it has a really beautiful wide tuck, which could have been a grow tuck, you know, to make it where you could let it out when the child got a little bit bigger. And then here's another tuck. And then down here on this ruffle, there's just a really neat, it's kind of a big fat piping, but it was a really neat way of doing a ruffle. Now that is still not the most interesting part of this slip. I'm going to show you what I really think is the most interesting part. There's a little piece of a handkerchief that has been simply whipped on by hand, kind of cut out and whipped on by hand right here. Now if you can travel over here with me, let me pull it over. Here's another little piece of a handkerchief, or maybe even a linen napkin that's been whipped on by hand. Let me go under here and show you the secret of what this mother or grandmother was doing. Do you see the little holes there and the little repair? She didn't like those little holes in this slip for her daughter or her granddaughter, so she cut up something, either a handkerchief or a napkin, and made a little creative repair. All right, now let me just show you. I think I'll turn this one back this way. Let me turn it back this way. Do you see there's another little hole there? She had carefully repaired it by hand, but just thought she really wanted to cover it up. Now, very at random, let's come on down on the slip, and I see here's another one. And then over on the other side and on the back, there are even a couple of little patches too. I think that's so cute. This mommy didn't want her little girl to have a patch slip, so she just chopped up a handkerchief and fixed it. Isn't it fun to look at the beautiful antique clothes that our mothers and grandmothers and women who came before us fixed and made and remade? I really enjoy that, and I hope you do too.